Hi, everyone. Welcome to the KSHA podcast. This is episode 1, and we will be discussing AAC Awareness Month, which is October. My name is Hannah Robinson, and I am the Vice President of Communications for the Kansas Speech Language Hearing Association. And I am joined here with our guest, Susan Kerner, who is a clinical assistant professor at the University of Kansas Medical Center. So October is AAC Awareness Month, and I thought that there was no one better who could discuss this topic than Susan. So Susan, will you introduce yourself to our audience?
Absolutely. I am Susan Kerner. I am a clinical assistant professor at KUMC, like Hannah said. I began in this role in December of last year. Prior to that, I've been at KU in the intercampus program in communication sciences and disorders since 2019 as a graduate teaching assistant as I am pursuing my PhD, which is set to be done fairly soon. I'm inching closer to that finish line. And before returning to academia, I worked 5 years full-time clinically in a variety of settings, primarily in outpatient settings, and outpatient pediatrics was where my heart was for the last 2 years of working, and that's where I fell in love with pediatric AAC. And right now, I'm also have the honor of being the director of the Children's Miracle Network AAC Lab at KUMC that was just founded and started this August.
By you.
By me.
That's a big deal.
Yes, very exciting.
All right. So I have a few questions for you today. And the first one I want to ask you is, what do you think everyone should know about augmentative and alternative communication?
The very first thing that I hope I instill in all of my students is that communication is a human right, and that everyone uses AAC to some capacity, and everyone has a choice of what communication modalities that they get to use. For example, I might have 5 minutes, but I need to ask my mom a question. And because I know I have 5 minutes, I choose to text her rather than call her because I know we'll begin chit-chatting. That is me making a choice and communication modalities to use. And so I also believe that every person has that right to make a choice. So in thinking along those philosophical lines, there's no hierarchical approach to AAC, and there's no one place to start for any person other than a feature-matched AAC evaluation should take place to figure out what features of what system, low-tech to high-tech, works best for this individual at any time, because again, the choice is so important. And sometimes low-tech options are great if you're going swimming, if you're around water, but then the robust vocabulary high-tech systems are also necessary to teach syntax and robust vocabulary and literacy skills. So basically, there's no one way to communicate that's better than another. Just successful communication is the best communication. So let's consider all the different modalities and how each individual communicator can use them to their advantage.
I love it. That's all great information. What are some best practices in the area of AAC that every SLP should be aware of?
This is a really great question. And I realize that I have skills that not every SLP does have, and that I can complete these AAC evaluations. I do have that knowledge and confidence in that knowledge to be able to do that. And not every SLP does, nor do I believe that every SLP necessarily needs to have that very niche knowledge. However, every SLP does need to have the tools and does possess the tools to be doing AAC interventions, which for someone like me in my evaluation clinic, that is amazing. So you can refer your kid or child to me, a young adult. We can do the feature match assessment, send them back to their home SLP, and they can implement the therapy. And that's a great model. And some Some best practices for implementing that therapy include the prompting hierarchy by Kate Ahern. It's one that all of my students have memorized by the end of the semester, starting from the least level of support to the most support, modeling throughout, and starting with a really inspiring and motivating activity. That's one thing I always say, like, we're not going to get any communication if the kid doesn't want to communicate. And so we have to start where they're super motivated, because compliance is not language. So let's start where they want to talk to us and then build from there.
That's right. I think that my next question goes into this, but for SLPs who maybe don't have the competence to do those AAC evaluations or want to gain confidence and competence, where can SLPs learn more about that process of evaluation and intervention?
Yes, this is so wonderful. So there is a free online AAC conference every June. So it's great if you're off in the summer and can have some time to dedicate to that, called AAC in the Cloud. And I believe the website is aacconference.com. But all of their previous conferences, the CEUs are archived on their website. So you can go back and watch all of the previous ones. And there's some really great AAC practitioners and researchers that present at that conference, and it's all very practical knowledge. There's also AAC communicators that present at that conference, so they present what was impactful for them or their perceptions of AAC, and I found those sometimes, most of the time, when I listen to an AAC communicator, I learned so much because they are the true experts, and every time I talk to one, I'm like, I'm a facilitator, you are an expert, because I don't use AAC every day. So AAC in the Cloud is a great spot. There's lots of great people on Instagram to follow: Rachel Madel, Mary Kathleen Daly, Emily Diaz. I'm going to leave off a bunch of them, but they're wonderful clinicians that share every day about best practices in AAC. The Talking with Tech podcast is wonderful. I love to listen to that. They interview researchers, practitioners, clinicians, AAC communicators again, and you can listen to. It's very easy to listen to, so I listen to it on my commute. And then the one piece that I would always say is, don't be afraid to talk to the company representatives, the consultants. So if your child is using a Tobii Dynavox device, go to the source. Talk to the consultant from Tobii Dynavox. Call tech support to help you out. I call tech support all the time. Because I'm an AAC SLP does not mean I have this all figured out. I actually joke and tell people I'm not techie at all outside of AAC. My husband's the one that does Alexa, has all that program, does all that stuff at home. I'm like, that is not me. I do that here, and then um, that's my capacity, I guess. I actually remember telling someone in undergrad, I will do anything in speech pathology, but I will not do AAC because I'm not tech savvy. And have I eaten my words or what?
Definitely.
um, so going to those people for support, going to the company that produces the app, learning about the app and why it's organized the way it's organized is so important to make sure you're setting up that child for success.
That's right. Wow. You are such a wealth of knowledge. I know that I already follow you on a few social media websites, but where can other SLPs follow you?
Yeah, I have a professional social media account, just Susan Kerner, SLP, on Instagram and Facebook. And I share some information about advocacy, some best practice information. Every once in a while, it's not daily, but it's just when something, an idea pops into my head and I have time to create a nice little graphic to go along with that. But yes, follow me. And I think if you're there and you like check out my Instagram, you can go to see who I've followed, and that might give you other ideas of other SLPs to follow.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. So, just so our listeners know, we will be attaching a reference list because there were a lot of awesome resources listed during this podcast. So be on the lookout for that. And we can't wait to see you next time. Thanks, Susan, for
Yeah,
joining us.
finally, sorry to interrupt your beautiful closing, but just to also say that KU has a wonderful group of AAC faculty, and I know that we are all happy to be a resource as we have time to be able to any SLP in Kansas. So if you have a question, you're welcome to email me too, or Elizabeth Leatherman and Kate Desjarnette, who also do pediatric, and Julie Gatz, who does adults with acquired disorders in AAC.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Susan.
Thank you.